Hi guys, and welcome to our online tutorial video. This is one of the teaching aids we used in class, so if you missed class, good news, you have all of the information we got live. So what you see me doing here is I'm beginning to color swatch. So what I like to do with all of my new palettes is to take one color at a time. And what I'm doing here is I'm adding some water to that little cube of paint, that little individual pan, and then I take my brush and I have about slightly damp. It's a damp brush, but what you want to do is mix that in and get a really nice thick sampling of the paint on your brush. And you see what I'm doing here is I'm going about, let's see, this will be the third swatch now that I've made. So I started at the top and then I went down again, and then third time, and I finally then started to put some water on my brush. So you can see how much paint actually your brush can hold. It's pretty awesome. And so when I started adding water at that point, you start to see the lighter, more delicate shades of your paint. We do this with as much water as possible, all the way down to see just how many shades you can get out of one color. So if you take a moment to pause this if you would like, and just color swatch for a little bit. I did every color in my palette, and if you have the same palette that I suggested you guys get, you're gonna have, and I went all the way down like 10 colors. So if you do that, you're gonna have like 5 pages of colors. If you're super detail oriented like me, like that's your dream. And that is just how it's cathartic. It's how I relax, actually, is color swatching. So if you have extra time, it'll probably take an hour to do it. But it's so cool once you get it done. You can see every color in a line like that. And I just do small squares. These are longer rectangles, but typically just a little square will do all the way down the page. So next, I'm going to move into some of our techniques. The first one, and you're going to see me writing on the page, wet on wet. And I love to make these little charts. It's very helpful for me, especially when I was beginning my journey with watercolors, to know exactly what I had just done, because I couldn't recall what the teacher had showed me. I was like, what was that called again? So charts are super helpful. So here's our wet on wet. And what you do is you take a clean brush and copious amounts of water. So it's kind of like puddling. You want a little pool of color. I put a little square there, but you can see that's a lot of water. Okay. Don't be afraid. This is exactly what you're supposed to do. So what I did then was I took my still wet brush and I spritzed or dropped some water in one of my inks or watercolor paints, and you can see there, as soon as I drop the color in the water, it just, these beautiful little explosions happen. It's so fun. And you can do one color, but you also can add other colors. You're going to see in a second that I'm adding a blue in there to get a really cool purple. You kind of swirl it around and push it around. Remember, you're the boss, so you get to tell it what to do. And this is all about fun and experimentation, so try different colors. Get yourself a printout, because in class I passed out these printouts, and I can give you one next week, but of the color wheel. It's so fun. So you can see the complementary colors. So you could make another square like that and do it again. See, that's a nice big pool on that square, really puddly. And then I take a nice wet paint and then just dip it in there. Pew. Oh yes, you have to do sound effects when you paint. Absolutely. It's required. So you see, I'm just like dabbing paint in the water, and it's got this beautiful swirly whirly thing going on. And I think I added some more color to this one too. I'm pretty sure I added a purple. So yeah, that's just another fun way to experiment. Do like half a page of wet on wet and just mix colors and shapes, and you can actually like do one dot and then drop water in that one little dot and drag it out and make leaves coming out of it. It's really fun. So the next technique I'm going to show you how to do is dry on dry. You'll see me, I write my little chart here. Dry on dry. So what that is you're going to clean your brush off. And basically it'll still be a little bit damp because you still need to be able to pick up paint on your brush. But you're going to take, again, remember we did that top color and our swatch was pretty opaque. It's very, very dark. You want to do that again. And what you're going to do is get a good amount of paint on a slightly damp brush. And you're just going to start going across, going across, going across. And what that's going to do is create some really cool ragged edges. If you see texture, because our practice paper is very textured, and it's going to seem like it kind of just drug across it. It's like, oh, there's some extra bits and bobs over here on the edges. That's exactly what you want. It's kind of like, I just love Japanese characters when they're done in that traditional black ink with those beautiful dry brushes. That's kind of the same thing. So you're going to get a rough edge on it, and that's totally fine. That's what you want. It's kind of hard to see with what I'm doing. It's a little easier to see in person, but I will say you'll notice it. You'll know that you're doing it right when you see little strips and jagged edges as you're moving down your swatch. Okay, so easy peasy lemon squeezy. Get your brush cleaned up, and now we're going to do damp on damp. And what's so fun about this particular technique is that it creates those beautiful, dreamy, diffused colors that a lot of people use in their artwork, like the background washes in a watercolor. And you can actually kind of do this with acrylics too. I know there's a technique to it, but you can do that even with an acrylic, create a wash that's kind of diffused and stuff. But with watercolors, what we do is we take a clean brush and we get a good amount of water on there. It's not puddled like the wet on wet, but it's still a good amount. Can't have it too dry. So it's a nice little light soak. And then you just take paint and just with a damp brush, and you don't use a ton of paint, just a little bit, pretty diffused colors here. You're just gonna lightly just spread it across the dampened area. So I put a little more color in there, and you'll see I'll add some more water in just a second here to help diffuse that. But if you can see the edges where it kind of gets spindly or spidery looking, like the water's reaching out across the page, that's what you want. You want a beautiful, diffused, soft kind of look. And just remember, if you get discouraged and think, oh, this isn't gonna work, your paint dries lighter than you think it will, okay? So don't get freaked out if your wash looks a little too dark at first. Just make sure, as you see along that purple square there that I made, do you see how the edges are just kind of like spreading out, fanning out? That's when you know you've done enough damp, enough water on the page. It helps it just to spread out. It's not like a pooling. It's not like gobs and gobs of water. It just makes this beautiful, cloudy, dreamy kind of effect on the page. And as I said before, it's super important to know how to do this because you're going to use this in a lot of things that we do in this class, particularly with backgrounds. It's the best technique for it. Okay, so moving on, I want you to go ahead and clean your brush, okay, and find yourself a new page. If you see, that you still got a lot of water in your page like that, just be extra careful because it will make a mess. But that's okay. We're here to make a mess. We're learning. So next, what we have up here. So it's another chart, and it's going to be the flooding technique. Okay, this is cool again. Like if you really like that abstract, psychedelic kind of looking swirly whirlies in your watercolors, this is for you. This is absolutely for you. So again, clean your brush. Take a clean brush, get a good amount of water in it. And what you're going to do is you're going to, you don't have to do a ton of water, but it's, again, you want to use like paint that's still pretty malleable. Excuse me, sorry. It's pretty malleable because what you're going to do, you can see that's kind of the amount of water there I have with that. I'm going to take a clean brush now. I'm going to clean out my brush, take a nice big amount of water this time. what I'm gonna do is actually like just push into the edges with the water. So you can see I'm kind of creating that pooling effect too, like the wet on wet, right? So then I take even more clean water to the side and I just flood that little swatch of paint with more water. And it creates a beautiful ombre effect. You can even add more colors. Like I'm gonna add a purple here. And I just love it. It just makes everything mixed together in this really organic way. And I'm gonna put even more clean water on the edge. So I'm gonna diffuse that purple more. And you'll see, it just makes a lovely ombre effect. It's just very soothing, honestly. I love seeing it. It's like again, it's just a very soothing, soft transition between colors. So that is our flooding technique. And again, you can push it, pull it, do what you want. You're the boss. So do it. And when you're practicing this week with this technique, enjoy that. Just make a mess. Don't worry about it being perfect. Okay. And so in a real life, so this is a real life example. Okay. So here is like a little mountainscape. And I saw I take lessons online too. Like I'm always constantly learning. I love it. So I borrowed this from another creator and I just thought this was a great example of a real life way that you would do this flooding technique. So she did some really great mountainscapes, basically is what they are. And they're more of like a traditional Japanese watercolor mountainscape. They're beautiful. And so she got a nice amount of paint on there, nice opaque pigment going on. And then she just pushed that water right into the edge of that. So it pulls, when you do it this way, because gravity is awesome, it will pull that paint down. So it becomes, it looks like a hillside versus just a line in the back of the picture randomly. And that's supposed to be mountains. This actually makes it look a lot more realistic, but also still subtle and a little more impressionistic, if that's the term. I think that's the correct term to use. It's not abstract, it's just the impression of a hillside. Okay, so the next technique is called the lifting technique. This is my absolute favorite, and this is why I think people get intimidated by watercolors, which is fine because art can be very intimidating. I totally understand that, but these kind of techniques, once you learn them, you really discover that watercolor is very, very malleable. It's a lot more workable than I think people think it is. I feel like people think, oh, once you put it on the page, it's there. What's great is we can use water to do all sorts of things. So like with the lifting technique that I'm going to show you here, this beautiful purple, this eggplant is gorgeous. Oh, I'm so glad I found this particular brand of paints. They are just so stunning. So what you do is you clean your brush and you take a damp brush. It's a decent amount of water on there. So you have that paint that's there on your page and it's still wet. But what you do now is you go in with more water and you pick it up. So if you do something that you think is too dark, you can just go in with a clean wet brush and clean it up. It's so great. It's an oops cleaner. I love it because that's what I use it for, because I'm always like getting little drops here and there that I'm like, I don't love that. And I just go in and pick it up while it's still wet. It's great. And again, you can use it to create dimension. And like you saw there, I took too much. I didn't love it. So I just went in with a little bit of the paint that I still had on my brush and I softened it up a little bit. So in a real life situation, like if you're painting a picture, typically what I do a lot of lifting on the leaves of my flowers and my plants, because, leaves they are beautiful. They catch sunlight, and especially if they're like a waxy leaf, they're just beautiful. They're shiny. So here I am. I'm painting a little leaf for you. Okay, and I think I'm going to do 3 more. Yeah, I'm doing 3 more leaves there. Okay. All right. And you can see I'm just continuing to use whatever paint I have on my brush. I'm not adding any more water. I'm not adding any more paint. I'm just using what I got. I'm a big fan of just using what you got. That way it's waste not, want not, right? So here I go. I'm going to take, again, a clean brush with a decent amount of water. We don't want to flood it, but we do want to have it wet enough to where we can just pick up the water. And remember, if you don't get it right the first time, it's totally fine. Art is for fun. It's not, we don't have to make it perfect. Like here, I messed up. I was like, oh shoot, I took too much. So again, I just took the little bit of paint I still had on the brush, and I went back in and I softened it a little bit, pushed it around, made sure I liked it, moved on to the next one. Okay. Again, this is just so relaxing. It's just making it what you want it to look like. Okay, so I got a little there, I got a little there, picking up a little more. And I really love how that super light leaf, the little smallest one, looks, so I didn't mess with it. But there you have a real life example of how you would use a lifting technique. And we'll go over that next week, especially as we're working on loose florals. We're going to use a lot of these techniques next week. So I'm excited to get you started on those florals. But and this one is this, we're definitely using this next week. This is the scrubbing technique. And I use it to make petals for a lot of my flowers, especially hydrangeas, roses, anything, carnations that has like a tight bulb, and it's, beautiful, dark in the center and moves out, okay? That, this technique is essential for making those leaves. So an easy way to make a rose, just so you know, is to create a bunch of little C's or little curves. You'll see me do this, see? Another one there, another one there. And again, what's so wonderful about watercolors is it's so malleable. It's so movable. You can make it what you want. If you don't love it, you can typically do something to either cover it up or take it away, like a lifting technique or something. So here I am making my little C's. I wanted a pretty decent size rose. This is just one of my garden rose variety or Cherokee rose petals. And here we go. So I took a little, again, clean water, very damp, not very damp, very light amount of water, because you don't want to flood it. You just want to tease out the edges of those petals. And because your watercolor is still pretty wet, and I move pretty quickly, and I would suggest that when we're moving through the lesson next week, I'm going to show you how to move through quickly and not have a panic attack about it. Because I know it made me nervous the first time I heard a teacher go, you need to move a little quicker. Move a little quicker. You can move it around. You can move the paint more. And it's like, wait, I don't know what I want to do. Well, what's great about watercolors is the water informs a lot of what happens. And so you just got to trust the process. And here you see, and I haven't dipped my brush again until now, and you can see, oh my gosh, look at all those beautiful petals that are happening there. So I'm cleaning my brush up. So that's just a very simple way to do a flower, and leaves are the same way. Sometimes you want your leaves not to have above in the lifting technique square, those leaves are very, very crisp. And they're beautiful, and I love that. I love the crisp look. But sometimes you want leaves to be as diffused and as, if it's in the background, you want it to look as diffused and lovely and soft as some of your petals. So what you would do, so I create some more leaves here. And we're going to discuss paint mixing too next week. As you can see, I actually have a couple of different colors on my brush right now as I'm making this leaf. I have 2 or 3 greens and a yellow, I think. And so I'm going back in because these are a little light for my liking when I'm doing a scrubbing technique. I want the middle part to stand out, but to be that contrast to the soft edge. So here I go again with a clean brush and not a ton of water. Again, see, just softening those edges up a little bit. And sometimes it may look like you have a little too much water. Guess what? Dry off the brush a little bit, go back in and suck it up with a pretty dry brush. Again, that lifting technique. So here we go. There's that one. And again, this is more of the loose floral look. Not everybody does it the same. but I love variety. So I love a variety of leaves, soft, crisp, dark, light, yellow, sage colored, the eucalyptus color, all of that. Like, I love all of those colors because, I mean, that's what you get in a bouquet of flowers for the most part. You're going to get several different kinds of greens and different kinds of leaves. So, and that's something we'll work on next week as well. I'm going to teach you several leaf shapes that you can use in your own art, and several flowers. It's going to be so fun. I can't wait. It's one of my favorites, obviously. I've talked about it, I think, 3 or 4 times now. I'm really stoked. But here you go. See, I've just teased out those edges. And I think we're done with those. All right. And so I've gone in to go clean up my brush. And the other thing that's great about scrubbing is you can take those edges as long and as far and as wide as you want, or not. You can just barely scrub the edge to get a faint little softness there. Now these are my pansies, or it looks kind of like a pansy. It's not particularly. So it's 4 spots of that beautiful eggplant purple again. I'm a creature of habit. I just love purple. Purples, blues, and greens are my favorite. All right, so that's a good amount of paint, because in this situation, if you want a really dark center and then just a very light edge, you're gonna want to get a good amount of really nice thick paint right in the middle. Okay, and so I'm starting to spread out these a little bit more. Okay, because I don't want them like super dark all the way around, right? So there I go. And as you practice, and feel free to stop this video whenever you need to and kind of look at it and go, what did she just do? Rewind it. This is for you to practice with. So please feel free, stop it, rewind it. That's what I do when I'm learning. I think my kids get kind of crazy when I play one clip over like 10 times because I didn't quite catch it. I'm like, I'm learning, guys, leave me alone. So there we have that beautiful little pansy. Okay. And I'm going in and cleaning up my brush again. And then, like I said, with a damp, not super wet, the damp brush, clean brush, look at that. Oh, it's so sweet. I'm a flower fanatic. And some of my favorite flowers are just the simple ones. Like the daisy is my favorite flower. Random, I know, most people don't even like them. I love daisies, and I love pansies, and I love all the flowers you'd find in a garden. I think what informed my love of flowers most was my little grandmother with a green thumb. And we would plant things and we would grow things. She had an amazing vegetable garden as well as a flower garden. We had fresh flowers, we had fresh vegetables, and I love everything green. And I think that's probably why I paint so many flowers. Because they just, for me, it's relaxation. Okay, so the next technique is, well, actually just line work. Okay, I will tell you, grab an extra load of patience for this. Line work can be very frustrating because you'll want to get it perfect. And unless you're like, just have a super steady hand and you're really used to this and you've already done this before, it's not going to be perfectly straight. And honestly, I don't like it perfectly straight. What I do like is that you can kind of change the depth and the breadth of the line itself with just the pressure that you put on the brush. So you can see, like, as I started, it's darker up top and I just kind of let down the pressure. Okay, so I have more pressure at the top of the line and then just let it up. And you can use this to do details, like, you know, do like the outline of leaves. As you see, that's what I'm doing here. I have the stem and I make a little vein, and again, like, this is so pretty. It's just very, again, very delicate. So this is a challenge I want you to try. So these are the dashes. But what I want you to do is do the same thing that you did with the line, the original line, the first one. And I want you to make it darker at the top and lighter at the bottom as you go down. That's a toughie. Don't get frustrated because it's hard for me still. And I teach classes. So line work can be a pain in the tuchus. It really can. But once you nail it, oh my gosh, it makes the biggest difference in how we create details in paintings. Because you'll use it in whatever form you use, whatever media you choose. You can use this in acrylics, in oils, mixed media. The technique of holding a brush a certain way and learning how you apply pressure is indispensable. It's so important moving forward for you as an artist. Okay, so another real life example, just like I said, the vein work on leaves. It's so fun. It's just very delicate and sweet, and yeah, line work's the best. So, and you have to wait for it to dry a little bit, because actually I went in to do this and it was still a little too damp. It kind of diffused my colors, but it actually ended up looking really cool, because it was like a really soft vein in the leaf that you could almost not see, but once you did see it, it was like, oh, well, that's cool. It's kind of like an imprint. It's like if you looked at the leaf upside down. That's kind of like what it looked like. So if you want to do something like that, there's your tip. Do it while the leaf is still pretty damp. Okay, then it'll look like, oh, the leaf's upside down. So there's some more vein work in that. Okay, and then you'll see, now on this leaf, I go in with a pretty thick amount of paint on the brush, because I was like, that was pretty, but I want the branch a little darker. So I did this and did not love it. You're not going to see me go in and fix it because I did not have time while I was making. I was about 15 minutes from having to take my son to school when I was making this video. So, but what you're going to see is I used that extra ink. I was like, oh, poo, this is really dark. Well, guess what? We're going to make more veins. And it ended up looking okay. I wasn't mad about it. I wasn't mad at it. So there you have it. That's our line work. I'm really excited for next week, and I can't wait to see you guys. Again, if you have any questions, Miss Linda has my contact info, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have. So I will see you guys next week. Have a good one. Bye.